All right, we will call the meeting to order at 5:32. And Evelyn, you want to do our Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, should we do a roll call first?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Well, we
Commissioner
usually
Robin,
do- your agenda is backwards then.
Commissioner Robin,
Present.
Commissioner Gassan,
Here.
Commissioner Craig. He's here. Commissioner Marshall is not yet here. He's absent. Commissioner Puder,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Soto,
Here, thank you.
and Chair Bernstein.
Here.
Thank you.
Did you say Sid was here or?
Sid was here, and he's back on as an attendee. Let me promote him again. So Commissioner Marshall is absent. Sid is now on.
Okay, all right. Now we do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes. Okay.
With the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of the
of the
United
United
States
States of America,
and to the republic
and to the republic
which
for
is
which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
For all.
for all.
Okay. Now we have to acceptance of the agenda. There's a motion to accept.
I'll make the motion.
Chairman Bernstein, I would like to add a very short discussion about community projects tonight.
Yeah, it was supposed to be on there, and I think what we'll have to do is, unless it's emergency, we can put that onto the discussion and completion of the fiscal year and the draft roadmap.
Yeah,
So we
just
can,
a short comment for others to think about for our next meeting. Thank you.
okay, great. Did we have a second to accept it?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Robin. And the approval of minutes from July 21st.
I so approve.
Second.
Okay. Now, public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Measure J Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Although the commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes are assigned for each speaker. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Okay. And now my welcome. So just in case everybody wants to know, we did invite Jane Garrison to come speak to us. She's on the agenda and we'll speak after we do the budget update about a switch in one of the community projects, which is part of what we were discussing. We now have a draft roadmap, which we'll be doing, which was great. So hopefully this year we will be back onto our regular track that Measure J should have. So we review all of the budget for 23-24 and present it to City Council in May. And we do have some unfinished business, which we'll talk about also the community projects, because we had $3 million for this year. And we have a 1.4, which was still unallocated. And a lot of that was parks. And part of the roadmap we'll do is we have a new parks and director, and we're going to ask them to come to our next meeting to also talk about some of the parks projects. I believe that is all my welcome comments. We missed everybody. Hope you had a good month off. And we will get started. So we start with an election of the Measure J Oversight Commission. Anybody want to speak on this?
I'd like to make a couple of nominations.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate Brian as the new chair.
Okay. Any other? Do you accept that nomination?
All right.
You'll have to
Thank you.
vote.
Thank you, Sid. That was a surprise. Thank you. Not that I doubt your support and commitment, but thank you.
You have both.
Jim?
Well, not to muddy the waters, I was going to nominate Naomi as chair, since she's been an excellent vice chair. And then I was gonna actually look at Brian for vice chair. So we can mix it up, but that was kind of what I was thinking earlier today. And for the last few weeks.
Okay, and just for point of order, if I may or may not have to resign in December or November. I'm not sure which one I would have to resign by. Do you know, Teresa?
I would think it's probably when you're sworn into city council.
Which I think
Yeah.
is December.
I would
December,
say
that is
so.
definitely December. And then I believe, and I don't know what the last iteration is, that they were going to look to reduce the size of commissions
Right.
by attrition. Now, I don't know if that has happened because or if anything official has to happen to do that or not.
It doesn't have to start officially. I mean, we would like to start doing the attrition now as we go. And then we'll be updating our ordinances and policies to reflect new numbers and that. But we can start the attrition process now without having made those updates yet.
And are there any target size, like per commission, at least? I know there's like a general parameters for all commissions. I think it was like
So
5 to 9 or something. But I didn't know if like certain commissions they were thinking of, like this would be good as a 5, this would be good as a 7 or a 9.
5 was a number that was brought up as kind of an ideal, but 5 to 9 being, I think, the range, with the exception being the airport, because that's a regional commission.
Yeah.
Is the order, so they would have to change the ordinance at some point.
There are some documents that will need to be updated. Yes.
So Naomi, do you accept the nomination for chair though?
I do. I would be honored. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I'll second or third that for Naomi as chair.
Okay, well, I would vote for, I would not like that. I would vote for Naomi to be chair and Brian to be vice chair at this point, but let's
Is it an open idea that if the two of them accept those positions, that we just call it done?
we still have to take a vote. Is that correct, Evelyn? So you want to do a roll call vote? The roll call vote,
Per person, I think, right?
Yes, so we'll do the roll call vote for, the motion was made by Commissioner Gassan to nominate Commissioner Soto as chair. The second was by Commissioner Robin. So then I'll go ahead and do the roll call vote. And we have Chair Bernstein,
yes.
Commissioner Robin,
Yes.
Commissioner Soto,
Yes.
Vice Chair Soto, Commissioner Gassan,
Yes.
and Commissioner Craig.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Congratulations.
Do we miss Commissioner Federer?
Yes,
We did, I'm sorry,
Oh, I'm sorry. I would
Commissioner
agree. Yes.
4-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
now we have to do vice chair. or we-
Vice
we-
chair.
Then may I renominate Brian as vice chair?
I think we already did nominate him.
So the motion was made by Commissioner Craig. Do we have a second?
Yes.
So second by Commissioner Gassan. Roll call vote. Commissioner Bernstein,
Yes,
Chair Soto,
Yes.
Commissioner Federer,
Yes.
Commissioner Gassan,
Yes.
and Commissioner Craig.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. congratulations.
Thank you. Yay, Brian.
Thanks, gang.
Okay, so do you read the rest of the meeting now?
I do?
There you go,
Oh,
Naomi.
okay.
Yep. Take the wheel.
All
the
right, well, I
gavel.
guess that we'll move on to the agenda, to new business.
Could I ask a question first?
Yeah,
Teresa, number one, I thought you did a great job speaking the other day at the 1 PS meeting. Secondly, is this my last year? Would you be able to let me know when you know? But I think this is my last term.
We can certainly look at that. I don't know, Evelyn, if you have that information, or we can look it up with the city clerk.
We will go ahead and follow up.
It is,
Yes,
Yeah,
it will follow up
located
with
on-
us.
it's located on the city's webpage, under the city clerk's section, under Measure J Commission. It'll list all the dates that everybody expires, their term expires.
yeah, I'm looking at the website right now,
right,
Sid,
you.
and it does say June 2023.
June 2023.
Mhm.
Same with Jim, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm termed out, so.
Thank you.
Great.
And was Linda extended?
I don't know. I think I'm now. So do you see that?
Yeah, it does say June 30, 2022. But I think
There was. supposed to be a
council was just going to
council
extend everyone who's currently on, right?
Okay.
meeting. That's right.
Can we get maybe a clarification? And if that's like for a year, or if there's going to be another like 3-year term that then is, how long the extension is and when is the reappointment done?
Sure.
Linda, did you reach out to the city clerk's office by any chance?
Yes.
Great.
And what did the city clerk's office say? You're on for another year or 3 years, another term?
When I heard back from the city clerk's office, they mentioned that they were supposed to go to city council, but Commissioner Puder can continue to sit on the commission until the elections took place for an extension.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. So I think that brings us to new business, which goes to you, Nancy, for a budget update.
Perfect. You should have had the summary of Measure J funds in your packet. And we're we're done with the year end. We just have to wait for the auditors to come and audit. But we are approximately $1 million over our estimated 21-22. The estimate was 19 million and we're coming in at 20 million.
Wow.
One of the things I wanted to let you know though is sales taxes are collected 2 months behind. So as I was comparing cash basis for July and August, what we received in July and August, July came in at 192,000 over prior year, and August came under 159,000. So between the two, we're about over the prior year, and the current year, we're only up about 34,000. We are starting to see some decreases not only in sales taxes, but also our TOT taxes.
I think that
And
makes sense.
is that seasonal? Is that a seasonal explanation, or do you think that that's an economic shift?
I think it's an economic shift from what I'm seeing when I personally go downtown for lunch. It's going back and reading from economic statistics that it's probably getting back to where prior to pre-COVID.
Yeah, it's back to, it's back to 2019. July and August were significantly down, but it looks like it will come back up for September through the rest of the year. TOT was down like 20 or 30%, and vacation rentals were down like 70%. But that was
Right.
basically because you don't usually get a lot of vacation rentals in July and August, but for the last 2 years, we've had a lot.
So now people can travel to Europe.
People can travel.
Exactly.
So I have a question on the budget, Nancy. What is the $2 million transfer out?
I'm pretty sure that was for something for police, if I'm not mistaken. And instead of paying it out of two different funds, oh, it was for the police radios. So instead of having the police department, most of it's coming out of the capital project fund, and you guys contributed 2 million. So instead of, I'll make a note on that for the next meeting or the next report I send out. So instead of them having to try to use up 2 million in one fund and 8 million or whatever it is in another fund, we just do a transfer into that fund. And so it's
Okay.
all spent out of one.
Okay. And we do have in the community projects, even though we still have 1.4 million from 22-23, which is not actually decided upon, right?
That is correct. I think, let me see if I can find something on my computer. I think we might have a little bit more. What happened was we over budgeted for 2 items. So we're going to have a little bit even left over from there, but let me try to pull that up real quickly. It'll take me just a minute. And Joel has that sheet I shared with him. I don't know if he can share his screen with you.
Okay. Well, while you're doing that, the next thing was we should add to this the 23-24 budget, because that's what we're actually going to be working on now. What an estimate, because that's what we're going to basically.
Yeah, I don't know if I really, well, I'll check. I'm not sure if I could add it yet before the council even sees it, but I could definitely do the revenue. But know, it's so hard. It's so hard right now because, all of a sudden we expected when COVID happened that we're not going to get sales tax, and then we get double sales tax, and now it's starting to fall again. And is it going to continue to decrease? So we might want to do that even when maybe a couple more months when we get more of the revenue, so we can determine what's coming in. Because right now we only have 2 months.
Okay. Well, in the past, we always had at least a number in there, and that's what we would work on for the capital budget. And then by May, we would adjust it based upon what we really had.
Right. Well, that was before the economy came flip-flopping on us. So I'll come up with something pretty much to put in there. And we can adjust it each month as we see what the numbers are coming through.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that'll also be really helpful, especially as we're thinking around kind of like inflation costs, increased supplies. It'll force us to kind of be very realistic with some of our recommendations about how much we can actually do. Great. Any other questions for Nancy on the budget? No.
The only question I would have also for that next year is if we're going to assume another $3 million in community projects for 23-24.
That's hard to determine because you're going to have a whole new council.
Right, but the council already recommended increasing the allowance for community projects.
From 3 to 6. I mean, yeah, from 1 to 6 or 1 to 3 or
1 to 3.
1 to 3, yeah.
1 to 3. We could
And
put that number
potentially-
in.
And potentially like a percentage of whatever our total.
We're just going to need to know if we're going to go out and request more, potentially have more applications for projects. But they
especially
also,
if we're
City Council also said, also asked whether we were going to have specific allocations for different areas like parks and things going forward.
I think these are all really important. Maybe we can have a more robust conversation around the draft roadmap, and then we can identify some questions that we might have for council as we try to develop that roadmap. I think the allocation is important, the different categories, because that might actually define when we're having certain conversations.
So one of the things I wanted to let you know on the community projects, our original budget was 3 million, leaving us with the projects that you selected with a balance of 2.9 million. That number was revised to 2.1 million, sorry, and now you have 3.8. left over.
We do?
Say what?
Uh-huh.
3.8 that is
had-
undesignated.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay, I'm gonna write this down.
okay. So there's a lot of community projects.
Yeah, and I'm kind of lost on that, but that's
I
good.
know, I thought we had 3 million and we allocated 1.6.
No, I thought we had,
We had 3 million because it was based on 3 years of not having community projects. So 20,
Yeah, 3
21,
million.
22.
I thought,
But
let me just double check. I
If
thought we
comes-
moved, since we didn't spell, I thought we moved that, all that, so that we have 6 million in 22, 23.
No,
You had 3 million.
the 3 million included 1 million each for 20, 21, and 22.
And then after that, council was going to determine, and they seemed very much unanimous, that the community projects budget would increase by year. But we don't know.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
we don't know
sorry,
what that
I'm looking at-
number
oh.
is. It's definitely gonna be more than 1 million. I know that they didn't know if it should be a percentage of what Measure J takes in, like the prior year, or however we wanna do that. Or maybe it's just easier to plan, like, yeah, now it's gonna get it, we're gonna get a big raise, and it's gonna be 3 million flat for the next few years. And then we kind of evaluate where Measure J taxes are coming in. If 5 years from now, Measure J just keeps growing and it's doing great, well, then maybe the community gets another raise.
Exactly. I agree. I'm sorry. I apologize. I was looking at Joelle's street repairs on that line item and I saw 6 million. I got really excited. So sorry about that.
And I don't know if that needs to be a council agenda, and if we can get that on the agenda for them.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Teresa, is there any way we can get that clarification before November? So it's this council that's determining that? Since they're the one who had this discussion.
Let me see what we can do with getting that on a future agenda or one of their workshops.
Mhm.
So we'll see what we can do.
Okay, great.
And
Thank
just,
you.
and on that request, Teresa, I know that council was also very much in agreement on simplifying Measure J, which might be good if through attrition, we lose commissioners. It might make life a little easier for staff, that Measure J dollars just get compiled into badly needed buckets. I know one of them was parks, and that maybe just every year, $5 million or $6 million, no matter what, goes to park projects. And also to roads. I don't know, they had some ideas, and we were definitely very amenable to that because the public, I think, spoke very loud and clear that, we need to catch up a bit when it comes to public services in this city compared to other cities in the valley. So parks being obviously a big one. And I think that makes sense maybe moving forward. Again, that can always change down the road with another commission, but it might make it a lot easier, especially if there's only 5 commissioners moving forward, and keeping kind of Measure J simple with that, and definitely projects that impact the community.
Yeah, I would also say it's an easier thing to communicate process-wise to the public, which I know there was a lot of confusion, especially with this revamp community projects efforts that we had last year. So I recognize that's a lot to ask for council to decide, but if they can kind of say definitely leaning this way or any other direction, so that way the spring just gets really busy trying to make our budget recommendations. So any conversations we can have in the fall is really, really helpful for us.
We'll take a look at that.
Okay,
Thank you.
great, thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have the discussion with Jane Garrison. Thank you for being here for the Oswett Land Trust proposal for community initiated projects, which is right in theme with what we're talking about. So thank you for joining us.
I was actually going to say, wait, if you have 3 million extra, can we change our proposal? We can definitely use that. That's for sure. Would you like me to give you a little introduction into why we're asking it to be reallocated somewhere else?
Yeah. that'd be
Nobody,
great.
I don't think anybody has really a full background on what you're here on and everything. So I would start from the beginning.
Okay, will do. So I am the founder and executive director of Oswit Land Trust. I would hope that everyone knows who we are, but just in case, we are a 501c3 nonprofit land trust. We are based in Palm Springs, and we work on putting beautiful open space into conservation, not only for us, but for future generations. We've done quite a bit in the several years since we got started. Our founding project was Oswit Canyon, hence the name Oswit Land Trust. And we worked very hard for almost 5 years to actually get that 114 acres into conservation. And that was our flagship project. Since that time, we then worked and we just this past year, we got the Palm Hills property, which is the goat trails above the Vaughn's Rimrock Shopping Center. So many people didn't realize that that area was still open for development. And that was almost 4,000 acres. And we're very, very proud of that. It's something that agencies and governmental departments wanted to get into conservation for almost 30 years. And it was the largest land acquisition for conservation in the history of the Coachella Valley. So we were thrilled about that. And then 2 other projects this year. We closed on another project at the end of Mesquite Avenue, which includes a half a mile of the Lichen hiking trail. And then our flagship project, which hopefully you've been seeing in the media, is that we actually, we had an idea going back about 4 years ago when we started seeing sales flyers for golf courses that were failing and they were being sold for development. We thought it would be a better idea to take these failing golf courses and actually create a nature preserve in the heart of Palm Springs. And we have been working toward the Mesquite Golf Course and also Bel Air Greens. And just last month, thanks to an enormous donation from one of our supporters, we purchased the Mesquite Golf Course, which is 120 acres. And we are creating the Prescott Preserve. And the property goes from behind the church on Sunrise all the way to El Cielo. It's a spectacular property as is, even though it doesn't look like a nature preserve yet. We have 2 ponds on there, and wildlife uses it already. But our vision includes adding more ponds. We've been working with Desert Water Agency to see how we can help with taking more reclaimed water. And we are working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and California with Fish and Wildlife on enhancing wildlife, the wildlife corridor that the Tockwitz Creek goes right through that property. And then, of course, we have a relationship with UCR. We're working with master gardeners, climate stewards, and we are creating a place that all of us in the community, now visitors, future generations, can actually enjoy nature regardless of your age and regardless of your fitness ability. Because we do recognize that a lot of the properties that get into conservation, you have to be in pretty darn good shape to get to the top of the property behind Vaughn's Shopping Center. So this will be a really wonderful place for the community. We also bought in the purchase a 4,100 square foot maintenance building. But when we walked into the maintenance building, I immediately thought, all right, we can clean this up and we can make a nature center here. And that is what we're doing with that building. We're working toward that. Be a great place that we can educate kids and visitors to what, fauna and flora is in the desert. So our original grant application with the Measure J Commission was for planting 300 trees to create a 2-mile walking loop that had shade along Riverside Drive, just to remind everyone. And that was, I believe, put on hold because of the CV link and not knowing really what the landscaping was going to be along Riverside Drive once the CV link starts the construction. but it's no doubt that we need trees at the Prescott Preserve. So we actually, just to give you a little bit of our timeline, we applied for a planning grant with Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy. And some of you may know that the board of directors for the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy is made up of leaders throughout the state. It includes one city council member from all 9 cities. It includes Supervisor Manny Perez, someone from the Wildlife Conservation Board, USC, and that board just this past week voted unanimously to approve our planning grant. And that $163,000 enables us that we have now hired a restoration and landscape architecture firm. And in the next 4 months, they will come up with all the schematics, the construction plans, the cost. And then we take all of that in January to the state. And that's where we ask for our millions to actually do the nature preserve. But in the meantime, we had the idea that if we could take our grant application for the 300 trees and move it to the Prescott Preserve, it actually is a benefit for so many. First and foremost, I would love for the city of Palm Springs to be the first grant that we receive for any plant or any tree. I just think it says a lot. It's a big statement that the city will be the first one to put a tree in the ground there. It also allows us to actually start planting before we get our big grants. Because as it sits now, we won't actually be able to do any of the planting of trees and plants and pollinators and butterfly gardens. We won't be able to do any of that for a year because we have to go through all the planning and then the grant process. And then hopefully by fall of next year, we'll be able to plant. But if we can reallocate the 300 trees, we can actually start putting them in the ground at Prescott Preserve pretty soon. So a lot of information to throw at you, but I wanted to try to give you as complete a picture as I could in a quick, short amount of time. Yeah, question.
Jane, thanks for the overview, and thanks for understatement of the day. Thanks for all of your good work and the results.
Thank you.
I have a couple of headline questions and also a headline reaction. My headline reaction first is the Riverside project. At least in my mind, the Riverside project is still a viable project, subject to more rounding out edges of expertise and stakeholders. Right? But that's a good project. I liked hearing it the first time, and I still like it. So with that said, I don't think there's a need to necessarily swap out one for the other, since we're hearing about 2 viable and laudable requests. So with that, what I digested is that with the state funding, which could certainly take a year, if not longer, for the approvals for that, what would be the specific ask of Measure J for dollars and timing for the Prescott Preserve? And how does that fit in if there's not the support from the state that you're anticipating to get?
Great questions. And I have to say, I love the Riverside project. I still love the Riverside project. We would be happy to do both of those projects. We don't need any assistance from the city other than the funding from the Measure J. If we were able to get that, we would love to move that one forward. I think it's a great one also. The timing for Prescott Preserve, we could get started really quickly because we've already hired LSA, who some of you may know, they're a very well-known restoration company. We've already hired them. We already hired Brightview, who is our landscape architecture firm. So if we were fortunate enough to receive the funding for the 300 trees for Prescott Preserve, we would immediately engage with them and say, okay, we start putting these now. As far as the funding from the state, we are incredibly confident that we are going to get the funding from the state to actually do the restoration. And I'll tell you a little bit why. The first planning grant from Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy, that is a state agency. So a lot of people don't realize but that is a state agency. And they have a representative at that meeting from Wildlife Conservation Board. Wildlife Conservation Board is who we are going to be applying to for our big restoration grant. The good thing for us is that there's an enormous surplus in the state in restoration dollars. I will tell you, most land trusts, they don't want to do restoration. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of coordinating. It's being very strategic. It's bringing in all the good players. We love it because we love bringing the community together. And that's why we're working with Master Gardeners and UCR. So we're confident we're going to get it because the surplus, and we are already engaging with them. So, and they're telling us, come in big, bring us all your ideas, everything that you want to see. And that's why we're working with Desert Water Agency, because I think it would be amazing to add more ponds to that nature preserve. We already get some incredible migratory birds there. We actually started having bird counts and research from the day we closed. They're doing it every other Thursday. It happened this morning again. They're up to 39 species of birds on an old golf course. Mm-hmm. So we know that if we enhance the ponds, enhance the vegetation, we're going to get even more. So we're going to ask for everything in it. Pollinator gardens, butterfly gardens. We want to do a memorial forest, definitely ponds, walking trails. Down the road, it would be great to have some shade structures. And this is really going to be, you talk about Central Park. We see this as a central preserve in Palm Springs. There's nothing like it. And it's going to be, we've been talking with tourism individuals and committees, and it's going to be a really popular place. It is already. We can't believe how many people come out already and say, I just want to walk it. I want to see, I want to catch on to the vision. And if I would invite all of you to go, and it's open to the public, it will always be open to the public, and go and walk and join us in imagining what it was going to be.
Great. Thank you so much. I have an echo to Brian, and then a couple of questions. One, I agree. I would really hate to see this request take from the Riverside project, not just because the need, and it's a great project, but we did go through a pretty intensive process of vetting and qualifying projects and taking it to council. And it was a new process for us. And so for kind of credibility of our process, I would hate to kind of pull from that list. Is my gut reaction on the Riverside project. And then in terms of the preserve, one thing that we asked both city departments and other projects that came to us sometimes was how does this fit within a master plan? How does this fit with a bigger vision? So can you speak to a little bit about how getting these funds for these specific amount of trees to kind of hold you until you're able to do the full master planning isn't really in conflict, that it helps get you there, and it's not necessarily investments we're doing in the preserve that might actually be contradictory to whatever the full plan you all eventually develop in the next 12, 18 months?
Yeah, great questions. And first, I want to echo again, we absolutely want to do the Riverside project, and we are so wanting to get started on that. And the only reason why we said reallocate is we just thought it was put on hold, and we didn't know if there was as much interest as there is. But and again, we would take on both these projects and not require anything from the city as far as help other than the finances. I see that planting 300 trees before we actually get our state funding for the master plan important in a few ways. If people are anxious to see the preserve happen, it doesn't happen overnight. And we are doing it the right way. We're bringing in the experts. It's going to be done the way it's supposed to be done. We're moving incredibly fast. Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy couldn't believe that we applied for our planning grant 2 weeks after we owned the property. So, and that's a lot of work, but we want to move quickly because the community is really excited about it. And so are we. And we want to keep the momentum going. And we feel that if we can start planting, now it's going to be within the master plan because we would rely on LSA and Brightview, who we've hired. We won't just say, oh, let's just, throw a tree here and put a tree there. There's no way. We're going to make sure that any trees that we put in the ground are native trees, that they're going to survive, that the irrigation is fixed to work on the tree until we're able to reduce water for the native. And so we would rely on LSA and Brightview to help us plant and determine where we can put them. But it would be amazing if we can actually get some vegetation in the ground now. It would just give us a little jump start. The other thing is it really shows, it will show when we go for our state grant, it really shows the city's commitment to this project as well. And that comes up a lot. We were awarded a $4 million grant for Bel Air Greens. And when we did the virtual presentation, Christy Holstead was mayor at the time, and she came on the virtual meeting, the virtual site visit is what they call with the state, because it's important with these grants that they see that there's community buy-in and they see that. And so it will speak volumes when we actually apply, because they do ask us, they ask, what is Oswald Land Trust? What is our contribution? Well, for us on this one, it's like the property. So that's a huge contribution, but they want a planning grant. And that is why we do a planning grant, not only so it's done right, but the state wants to see that. They want to see that we did a planning grant, and they're going to ask, how does the city feel about this? And not just the residents, but how does the city feel, the commission, the council, the city government? And so when we say, well, actually, we planted 300 trees or we planted 300 pollinators thanks to a grant from our Measure J, which comes from the community itself with the money they spend, it says a lot for the grants. And we've gotten very good at grant work. We've been approved for $20 million in grants, which is pretty remarkable for a new land trust. And the fact that we operate on such a small budget. So we know what they like, and they would like that a lot.
That's super helpful. I have a couple more questions, but I just want to open it up to the rest of the commission in case they have questions too. Yeah.
I do just a very quick question, Jane. What is the dollar amount that you'd like on this designation for Prescott from us?
Oh, well, the sky's the limit. I came into the meeting. I know that we can do 300. When we originally did our grant for Riverside, we had figured out that we could do 300 plants or trees and fix the irrigation on them, get them in the ground for $350,000. So, that basically that number fits 300 trees. If we said, you know what, let's do 600 trees, we can double that, and we know we can get 600 trees in the ground. Yeah, Jeffrey.
So I think just to clarify for the commissioners, the idea was that this isn't like a whole new community project, because that wouldn't really be fair to other people. The point was that this was a project of planting trees that we all liked, and it was in another location that we couldn't do because of the CV link. And so the request now is to take that existing community project that we all liked and move it to the new location, whether or not we agree to that or not. But I think we, in the interest of fairness to people who did not, we should not, since we didn't open this up to everybody to submit a new community project, this should be a unique one that is really a transfer given a change in circumstances that just happened, which I don't think really would any other proposal would fall into this category, I think.
If you chose to do it as a transfer, which we'd be incredibly grateful for, I will give our commitment to coming back with the Riverside proposal if we could, because I agree. I still think it's a very important project. Riverside Drive could be amazing. It could be absolutely amazing. And the great thing is now on the other side of Sunrise, we own the property. And so it creates an even larger than the 2-mile loop of walking trail. The other thing is we've established these really incredible relationships with the Arts Council and different artists. And, that bridge across Riverside Drive, every time I ride my bike over it, my mind just thinks of how beautiful it could be. So if you chose to do that as a reallocation, come back with Riverside if we could. We would really love to be able to do that.
I think that's a good operation, a procedural point from Commissioner Bernstein. And I don't, the timing probably does not create any real conflicts given the way the Riverside project can evolve. I'm not on mute, am I? No, you can. Okay, good. So I think these all flow together, and they're both meaningful projects for the capital C community.
I just want to tell you real quick, I received an email yesterday from a high school teacher, and he said, we have 25 kids who want to be involved in Prescott Preserve, and can we come out and map every tree that's on the property? And I just love that. I love that these kids want to get out there and they want to map all the trees, and they just like the skill they're learning. So I'm like, yes, absolutely. This is a community space.
Commissioner Butter, I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah. I'm listening to your comment, Chair Soto, about the integrity of the work we put in last year and the process that we followed, but also Brian comments about the integrity of your project. Can we not continue with the Riverside tree as is, and then you submit this project for this year? It will be quickly, we will be reviewing these, and then I think it makes it a cleaner project all the way around. That's my thought.
So I think the question is, if Prescott Preserve is added for this budget year's community projects, could we make that decision before like May, which is when we made it last time? I mean, I guess the question to the commission then would be, before we kind of reviewed all of our applications and interests for community initiated projects and then made a mass decision in mass about what the recommendations from the commission would be. We haven't ever done it kind of like on a rolling basis, right? So that would be the distinction. We'd have to decide if we are comfortable doing it on a rolling basis versus waiting until we review everything and then making that recommendation in the spring. Commissioner Gazan.
Well, I mean, I think what's appropriate is when the public has a request from Measure J, they come to us and speak in public comment. Like we've had members of the public that have done this in the past, whether it's a public safety issue or whether it's an improvement. I mean, the ship has sailed on this. We as a commission voted on our community projects. Jane, I love your cause. I've donated to your cause. Our household has donated. And I believe firmly in trees, especially as we're going to get hotter and hotter. We're going to need them in this town as we remove grass. And our city needs to do a better job with code enforcement of shopping plazas, etc. We've not done that. So you've got my attention big time and you have my support. However, based on how this commission operates, and we've been under a bit of a microscope, I don't think this is quite fair right now. I think it's a super good cause. But we did pass on the Riverside project mainly because of the CB Link issue. But I feel the ship has sailed for this fiscal year. We definitely, I feel that this should be on the list for next year for community projects. I think it would get a lot of support. But I think we have to be fair. I mean, what's to keep someone who applied in the spring to come back to us and say, hey, we've changed our mind or something's altered on our request, but now we would like the money spent on this building, even though we wanted a BMX dirt bike trail, but now put it to this. And yeah, that's a great cause. I mean, again, we kind of have from a commission standpoint, and Jane, this has nothing to do with you. We do have procedures that we need to follow, and requests come in from the public and public comment. I realize this has a little nuance. It's a little different. But I don't know that we can backtrack on what we voted. We have to keep the integrity of the process that we put out there to the public when we did that. And again, you know, it was definitely scrutinized and looked at. And I don't know, that's my 2 cents. Again, I really firmly believe in this project. And I'm huge on trees. You know, I would love 20 more pickleball courts too, but I'm not going to get those right away. You know, and there's a
Can I make
lot
one
of needs out
suggestion?
there. So again, I just think it's appropriate for our next round, and I think there's going to be a lot of support by this. And I've always been a big proponent on parks and nature for the city.
The other thing we have, just, you know, since we have that 1.4 million in parks that we're gonna wait for the parks director, is, you know, that's not been spent yet. That is open, and we did decide to do that. I don't know if this would fall into it or not, but it's another consideration.
And
we're
we
supposed
have, we have other undesignated funds.
Right, and this kind of makes me feel like the urgency of the direction from council about how much extra community, it's just hard to change our process without having kind of the overall new availability kind of decided and told to us. Before we get too much, I did have one more question about to Jane around just potential delays or the project itself. I've just read what I've seen on the news, but is there any potential where the HOA concerns and litigation could potentially delay any of this? And would then that mean that like we're actually, the timeline for applying for this year's community initiated projects would not be a burden?
No, not at all. We're not concerned about the lawsuit one bit. And actually it was brought up with, I mean, we don't like it. Let me, you know, obviously say we don't like it. It was brought up at the vote from the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy, and they, you know, they brought it up, they discussed it, and they agreed unanimously as a board that it's a frivolous lawsuit. It's not going anywhere. You can't enforce someone to run a golf course on a piece of property. And so, and we are in communication. The residents of that community have reached out to us. The president of their board of directors resigned over it. There's now special meetings happening within that community. It's caused a lot of problems within the community because the residents did not know. And there's 600 residents in Mesquite Country Club who did not know about that lawsuit. Only the the 5 board members, which is now is 4. So no, we're not concerned that that will delay us.
Got it. I want to be mindful of time. It seems like there are some general concerns around changing a decision from our last recommendations to council. And we don't know yet the structure and timeline for this upcoming budget year.
Can I interject something real quick?
Yeah.
So our grant application, just something to think about, was 100% focused on the importance of trees and the importance of shade and the importance of climate change. If you remember, it was so focused on that. And when we were writing the application, we were originally just going to say 300 trees, and then we decide where we're going to put them somewhere within the community. If you were to reread the grant application, so much of that talks about that, the importance of, you know, carbon sinks as trees, how they do, you know, suck in the carbon, and the importance of climate rising and the shade of that it provides. So I don't know if that helps at all, that, you know, Riverside Drive was, yes, of course, that was the location, but the focus of the grant was the importance of 300 trees getting planted in the ground in our community, if that helps you at all.
Yeah, I'm with Commissioner Gazan. I'm very supportive. I actually live really close to the preserve, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it develop. And it was in 2020 when people would just like play in the, like, walk along the golf course and like throw the frisbee. It was just like the most earnest thing I've experienced in the city, I think. But I don't know if we can make a recommendation at this meeting, is my general consensus. And unless there's a motion someone wants us to consider, but I think we have to get a little bit more direction from council about what the community initiative projects are going to look like for this year. And then what's the most, I don't know, maybe we decide half of the money by January, and then we decide the other half by the end of the year. Like, there might be some flexibility in trying to speed up the process, so you're not waiting until May for a decision. And I think that's something we can and probably should explore. But we did have a lot of scrutiny about our process since it was so new. And I do want to be mindful of that.
If I could add to that, for the commission, so having digested all of the information that we have from Jane and the trust, I'm still, I'm not of a clear mind on the procedure. I might be instinctively understating for my own benefit, understating the rigidity of a procedure of how to use available Measure J funds mid-year. So I'm looking at availability of resources that we have been trying literally for years to put into service. And the process, as much as anything, the process is preventing us from putting dollars into service. If the commission at the next meeting or the meeting after sees this as something that should be voted on to invest Measure J funds in, my question for Evelyn and staff is to help guidance on this of what makes it inappropriate to take an action mid-year, given that we have available funds and we're considering a project that potentially has the characterization of community funds. But if Parks Department came in mid-year and asked for us to endorse a project, we probably wouldn't be stumbling over questions of procedure.
Can I make a recommendation? We did have the parks planning to come next month to review, because we had 20 different parks things that we didn't decide on which one to do.
Right.
So maybe we can do that all together to make the presentation on how to use the unused community funds at once.
Yeah, I guess the question, Vice Chair Robin, would be, we intentionally set out a procedure for community initiated projects, which is just a small portion of our budget. And then there are the other remaining funding bucket of Measure J funds. And I think that bucket, if we wanted to have a conversation of it coming from there, then there is a lot more flexibility in terms of when we make those recommendations and moving it outside. Like, it could be done on a faster timeline. I think the difference is those Parks and Rec projects that would come up, or any other project that would come up, would likely not be coming from community initiated projects in that same way. But because this application came to us as a community initiated project, it's from a very specific budget or a bucket of Measure J funds rather than the overall.
Yeah.
Anybody, does that make sense to everybody? Does that?
I understand it. It sounds very rigid based on vocabulary used.
And I think there's some,
not to be cute about this, but it's as though someone inadvertently checked the wrong box, and so as a result, the application has to go into another year.
and I think there's something to say that if there's a project that comes from the community, how can we review it, possibly recommend it or not recommend it as just a general Measure J project and not as a community initiated project?
Mm. Yeah, I think we've had a great discussion on this, and it's certainly supportive of this project. But it is, again, back to our process. And what I brought up to talk on the agenda is Joelle had made the comment before we all left that there's so much in the pipeline and it's stuck there because we're just reproducing the same stuff and putting more big capital projects into the pipeline. Well, it seems to me either our subcommittee that started this, Dom helped us, and Craig and Ms. Soto, we need to take a look at what we're doing again and maybe have different kinds of projects. So we're just not shooting enormously expensive projects that take a lot of city time, and look more at these kinds of community projects and maybe float them through differently. So I think it's before us maybe to make a better process with what we have to work with. How do you feel about that, Ms. Soto? You think we can go back and kind of look at our proposals and the timelines and for this year make a bit of a change? And Craig, you also?
Yeah, I would say we have some work to do for the next couple of months to redefine that new structure before we can make any recommendations. And we will be needing some direction from council as to kind of the allocation and those potential categories. All of that will influence how we are able to kind of update that process. But we do have a couple more items on the agenda, but I want to thank you so much, Jane, for being with us and talking with us and being patient with us as we kind of figure this out the next few months. And hopefully we can get back to you real soon as to what our options are.
Okay, great. I appreciate it so much. And if there's any information you need, any questions, please reach out and we'll get it to you right away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Great. Joel had to step out early. He had a family commitment. So Don is going to quickly present to us, please, the Measure J capital improvement project updates.
This is so good. Yeah.
All right, can you guys all see the screen?
It's nice to see that, Don. It's nice to see that you don't have to do everything anymore.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you to all of you too for stepping up. So basically what we gave you is, this is just all of the projects that have Measure J funding. And I guess in the July meeting, there was questions to Joelle, like, we just passed the budget. How are you going to prioritize all and get, this long list done? And so generally we have an internal document where we list all the projects, whether it comes from any kind of fund. And then it's usually sorted by priorities 1, 2, 3, 4. And so we spend a lot of time on the high priority 1 projects. So coming from Measure J, that would be like Plaza Theater, pavement rehab, stuff like that. And then we go to project level 2s and then level 3s, and how the 1, 2, 3, 4s come about. Remember the 5-year CIP booklet? There's a category that's called project priority. And so basically we put, some projects as essential, some projects as necessary, some projects as desirable, and then some projects as deferrable. So I just kind of used that same thing. So if it was essential, it was a 1. If it was necessary, it was 2. If it was desirable, it was 3. And then the last one was 4. So, or anything else was 4. And so basically, this is kind of how we organize stuff. So you'll see like things like a lot of things here, we haven't even touched it yet. We're going to start it in Q3 or Q4, just because, we have, just a limited number of staff. And then as we add more staff, obviously we can reassign things. And this is a pretty dynamic list that, if somebody's super overloaded, we'll swap out project managers or give more to another project manager. If we get a new project manager in the year, again, we can reallocate everything. But we just wanted to show you that there's a method to what we're doing. And then so if these surprises come in and say, hey, let's build a navigation center, right? It's just like we can easily say, like if we had this last year, we could easily see, okay, which are our big projects that we're working on, who has availability, what things that have to bump down, and because we only have a limited amount of bodies, and it's pretty easy to show what our workload is. And we review this every 2 weeks. We update it every 2 weeks. And that's kind of
What if something doesn't have a number next to it?
Those were like these things, finance issued a check to them. So the convention.
Engineering's not doing it. They're just paying, with cities just paying for it.
Yeah, and the convention center staff is going to run that project. So they're going to run the carpet replacement at the convention center. And so like this is an engineering document. So our staff time really isn't being spent hovering over the convention center staff to run that project. So that's why there's no priorities for those.
Thank you.
Just following up on Commissioner Craig's comments.
Yeah.
We should make sure that like, we know what's happening with some of those, and that we make sure that they are identified and promoted as Measure J improvements. I think that's one of the big issues that we've talked about in the past year was promotion of Measure J and what the funds are getting used for. And especially if these are being done by third parties and it may actually be accomplished this year, those would be good ones to really mention, like, especially ones like, I think the Mizell kitchen was on there and other things that may really get a lot of public support.
Also, sorry, Don, if you can just put that excellent
Sure.
spreadsheet back up too. It seemed as if there were the ones that were labeled Measure J were ones that were like fully Measure J projects, but then there are other projects that have multiple
Oh.
funding streams
Yeah. So
that don't have the MJ designation, which makes sense, but I would want to make sure that similarly to what
Yeah.
Commissioner Bernstein is saying, we're promoting it as Measure J project because there is Measure J funding going into
yeah.
that.
So these were the capital improvement numbers. That's how it's sorted. And then these MJ ones were the things that were passed in the budget. So these are all the community initiated projects. Remember, drainage, shade structures, fence. So these are all the community initiated projects. And then whatever else, like the sewer lateral, was added to the budget. Yeah, so when we first did it, we assigned all of them 3s because we were already working on all of these stuff, as well as other stuff not on the list. And then
No, I don't disagree with your priority at all. I'm just saying for us, it's important when we're looking at your 1s and 2s at the top.
Yeah.
Even though they don't say MJ, that they are Measure
Yeah,
J
I mean,
funding is going into them or
Yeah.
all of them. But, just keeping that in mind that, our projects, our capital improvement projects have multiple funding streams.
yeah,
all
so
Measure
this was just a snapshot. I mean, it's
Mhm.
already outdated, just because you had to post your agenda ahead of time and stuff like that. So, but this is just an internal document. Like we're not the plan wasn't to bring this to you every meeting. It's just because, it did take time to like sort through everything to figure out, running the Measure J, but it was just because the commission had a question like, how in the world are you gonna like prioritize things? And it was just to show you that there is a method that we are using. But to have, because this is a shared document, so each project manager, like I might add in data today to update my projects, and then another project manager might have something, on Monday to add to update their projects and stuff like that. So it's definitely like a living document. It changes every single day. And so, and it wasn't to create more work where we have to like sort through this document and create a report for the commission. It was more to show you that, we have everything tracking. And then there are some things that we are deferring to, like maybe the third quarter of the fiscal year or the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, and it's because we are prioritizing other things. And then when new things surprise us, we have a method to adjust projects and adjust their priorities. And also when we add new staff, we have a method to reassign projects and workflow and stuff like that. So that was just the gist of showing you this report, was that it's and that way you can tell the story to the community that, hey, engineering isn't just just doing it because the squeaky wheel cried louder than my squeaky wheel, because we have to make I mean, we need time to get work on these projects, right? And we can't just spend all of our time creating presentations and leaving no time to work on the project. So that was the idea of just showing you the chart. So
Yeah, and just to show, it's like a solid 6 to 9 months before some of these projects get some real staff time on it. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I think it's really indicative of just how complicated it is keeping all of these things moving. So thank you. And then want to make sure we spend a little bit of time of our time today discussing the last thing on the agenda, discussion and completion of the calendar and draft roadmap. Chair Gazan, I think you're.
Yeah, I have to leave here shortly, but I just, let me look for, I just want to make sure that we kind of follow. And you will not need any more of my input. And that will hopefully make the rest of the meeting go faster. I would just follow 2019-2020 roadmap. It's what we've always done. That's been the history since I've been on the commission. So January is when we do the Measure J audit. February, we start, well, and actually we can start looking at capital projects already in the fall. I think that's what we kind of expanded that depth because of wanting to discuss those projects. And then move towards what I think is the most important thing of this commission, is that we always request and have that joint meeting with City Council. It's usually always in May of every year. So I'm going to leave you with that. I'm sorry that I have to cut off early tonight.
Before you run,
Yeah.
can I suggest that maybe we help revise this off, maybe, or with Naomi, revise this off ahead of the next meeting? Because we did have the one from last time. I think that was before Naomi may have been on the commission when we did the last roadmap. I don't know.
The last one was, and I can email them to. Well,
we did send it out to everybody, but some of these things are actually required in the ordinance, like the audit review, and Teresa and Nancy should know this. The audit review and the Measure J commission joint meeting is actually required in order to adopt the budget. They don't have to listen to us, but they do have to get that input in May or before they do a budget. And the audit that happens in January is actually required to be reviewed in the ordinance. You might look at it. We didn't do that the last couple of years, but that's part of the roadmap and how it was all set up.
Yeah, I agree. I think if Naomi can look at that or whatever, if we do it offline until our next meeting. But I think that's what we kind of adhere to. I think the only difference is that we start the discussion on capital Measure J projects a little sooner in the year because sometimes it's kind of a crunch.
Yeah.
And I'm for a December meeting if we think that's necessary. I think we've kind of had them the last few years.
I think we should also because we do have that leftover community initiated projects that we need to get the parks involved. And that may take up the next meeting. I don't know, or that's up to the chair.
Yeah, and I would
But-
say also we're gonna have new process to discuss and decide on. So
I think so.
that'll keep us busy October through December.
Mhm.
Okay, so it sounds like, and Evelyn, maybe you can correct me if this is allowed, can we do a working group for the 3 people? Is that,
3 people can meet off so long as it's, there's no decisions being made.
Right.
As long as it's not a subcommittee, I think it's okay.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Evelyn has the last roadmap. I sent
And
it
I
to her.
can, if you'd like, I can share my screen and we can go through what was on the last roadmap.
and then
Maybe
quickly
that one.
decide what we want to add? Okay,
Yeah.
if we can do that in the
So
next.
I had created, before I sent out the one that you saw on the agenda, I had created one with dates. The dates might not be the same, only because the city council hasn't finalized their 2023 calendar, but it's the same text that we had in the 1920. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and then you let me know what I can remove and what I cannot. Does that work?
That sounds great.
So this is one that I just amended the 1920 roadmap and made some notes. I added the dates. And that's basically it. You let me know what we can get removed or what's not pertinent to the commission. Let me go up.
That's actually the one, that actually is not what we got, right?
No, that's not the one that you got.
Yeah, that is the one you won. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That Jim was talking about.
So this is the one I created before I finalized the version I sent you, which is the same information from the 1920 roadmap.
Mhm.
Did we need to add something about, okay, you have the audit on there, I see, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the key is that you're always working towards that last date when we're gonna meet with city council.
Well, and I would say also for next month, the true up is important to note. Because the
Yeah.
last fiscal will be wrapped.
But just quickly, this is why the idea is of having an estimate for 23, 24, even though it will change throughout the year, that's what we worked on throughout the year, saying, okay, we're gonna have 15, 20, 25 million that we should be looking at for 23, 24. And over the course of the year, that gets adjusted based upon the real estimate. It's not actually the budget for next year. It's just city manager and finances estimate. And then before it goes to city council, it has to mesh up with what they actually think we'll have for that year.
Yeah.
And Evelyn, the hotspots became community initiated project.
Yeah, yeah. In October, right? The hotspots, is that when we would begin to discuss community projects? Dom, is that what you're saying too?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's what became community.
yeah,
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
yeah.
So do we remove this?
And to say discussion,
Of community.
community initiated project.
Right.
That was one year. What happened is for a period, we took out, we designated community initiated projects specifically to hotspots in the city.
Right. So we would have to have some of that paperwork into this commission by that time, correct? if we're going to have any community initiated projects to talk about.
Well, at this point, it doesn't even have to be applications in. It could just be like what we're gonna do for the upcoming year.
Like the process.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
Well, then why don't we say process and not project?
I'm gonna say discussion of process for,
I would say process, community, yeah, and that would give us time to go through what we want to do, the process.
yeah. And I think also we just have to be a little bit flexible. That might end up being in November if council hasn't given us much
Yeah.
direction by that point.
That's okay too.
Mhm.
So we should determine if we might want to look at a special meeting. But if they're on the holidays, we may have to have a canceled meeting in December.
Yeah, I would prefer to keep the December meeting because I just feel like the spring ends up being so
Yeah,
cramped with decisions.
We cannot keep this December 15th meeting because the city council is meeting on that date.
No, yeah, I'm open to changing the dates.
Okay.
Just that I would prefer to keep a meeting
Okay.
in December.
Mhm.
So we can say to be determined which Thursday.
Be rescheduled.
Yeah, to be rescheduled.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course. Mhm.
Evelyn, I had asked at the last meeting that we had when it would be determined that we could be back together live. Has there been any information about that yet?
We are working on that. So more information to come on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so then January, we have the audit, continue reviewing capital projects, the expo, the picnic and expo. I would maybe add community initiated projects starting in February as well.
Mhm.
And at that point, we're probably looking at like the actual applications themselves.
Yeah,
So to discuss new potential capital projects and or community initiated projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
is it possible if we get through some of those, that a recommendation could be made earlier than May to city council to get them funded and moving?
Are these dates normally flexible
They,
or do you
they
stick to them?
I mean, generally what happened was city council wants to see everything together in the past. And also at that point is when they know better how much money they think we'll have for next year.
Okay,
There is another option, you know, we have always done things. In the past, there has been cases where things have come up in the year. That is not something that I know the community initiative, it raises different issues, but there have been Measure J projects that have come up mid-year and been approved. And I think we did that in the last few years, actually. So that is not something that is out of unprecedented.
okay, okay.
Since
and
we
it's-
are unsure of the 2023 meetings for the city council, should we keep February through June as just a month and a year until the new schedule is adopted?
Yes,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll work on that. Any
Uh,
other
Hear me, Evelyn?
comments? I'm sorry?
Can you hear me, Evelyn?
Yes.
I take a mid-year report back to city council, generally in January, beginning of February. And I report on the fiscal year end if the audit has been completed and all the adjustments, that I take a mid-year report back that said, this is how we ended the fiscal year. This is what we have at mid-year from July through December, and to readjust if we need to add anything, add expenditures, projects, or whatnot. So that would be a good time if we want to take anything back to do it all at one time, including the Measure J.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, maybe that might be a question for Teresa, if Measure J could be part of that discussion in the mid-year. And then if so, then we'll backward plan in October through December for that.
Right, right.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then the only thing I would add is in May is the joint session with council would be.
Yeah.
To be determined.
Yeah, I mean, council has to tell us when that is.
Yeah, that one would fall on whatever their meeting is.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Um,
okay, cool.
based off of that, I'm comfortable with it. I don't know if anybody else has any other.
I like it. Can we all be sent this copy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, maybe we review it one more time and then we can vote on it next month. Does that work? Okay,
We can review next month, make some changes where needed, and then approve a final version.
Yeah, good idea. Mhm.
great. Okay.
It also, just to clarify, in the past, it has changed throughout the year sometimes if something else happens, so it's not, you know, always, it should be set, but not unchangeable.
Okay.
It's not set in stone, it's just a roadmap. Yeah, great. Wonderful. So we have literally a minute to spare. Are there any other commissioner comments or requests that you would like to add before we close out?
I would like to request that, I don't know what's gonna happen, that we figure out how to talk to Amy Blaisdell about promotion. That I know has sort of come off a few times. And I think last time, I don't know if I was gonna, we talked about potentially having, you know, at least a quarterly sort of Measure J update somehow, whether it's in the PS I Love You magazine or social media, whatever, given that it probably won't happen weekly, or monthly, but could be at least quarterly.
Mhm.
Have you reached out to Amy?
Not in the last few months.
We did not, mainly because of all the changes happening at city, so we figured, I sort of figured I'd wait and see. Because, you know, what happened both with the budget and city manager position.
If we could get into the PS magazine with a story on the projects that Measure J has completed and all of the paving and all the updated information about us, that in itself goes out to everybody in this town.
It
Yeah, I
should
think we
be in
just need a
every
regular,
quarter.
like, what are the what are the posts throughout the year that we can guarantee send her information, and then there's a Measure J plug. So I think we already have a guest, the Parks and Rec Commission or directors coming next month. So it might be a little loaded for October. I don't know if we want to try to do both, or if we can ask Amy to come maybe in November. It might be, I think it could be helpful for her to just come and maybe chat with us for 15 minutes with the whole commission.
I can certainly chat with her.
I
Okay,
think that's a good idea, Chair.
great. Awesome. Well, thank you all for your time and your conversations and your perspective. I appreciate it. And with that, we'll close out and adjourn this meeting.
We congratulate you.
Yes.
Congratulations, Naomi
I
and
forgot
Brian.
the election was today. All right, and thanks, Commissioner Robin, for being my vice chair. Appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody. Nice to see you.
Bye. Good night.